Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, riders, hiders and time biders, welcome along to the Joe Spiver YouTube channel where we discuss books and little else. And you join me, ladies and gents, on a rather curmudgeonly Sunday, I'm afraid. After a glorious weekend previously on the Adriatic coast, in my boat, many cocaine-filled romps where I fornicated with many, very many women, as I'm sure you can well imagine. I came back to the north of England this Sunday and decided to switch on to some of the political goings-on of recent days in Britain. And I stumbled across a video featuring Piers Morgan, I think it was for the Royal Television Society, in which they were discussing something like the relevance of partiality in news reading or something like that. For those of you who don't know, Piers Morgan is, first of all, obviously huge in America, and so lots of my audience is American, so I needn't really introduce him, but he is, if you didn't know, he is a greasy, pontificating, over-promoted, very attitudinised git that is now at the helm of Talk TV. And he is fundamentally apolitical. He delves most often in what we term the culture war, which of course doesn't exist, but is invented by fascists on both the left and the right, who have no idea how to solve economic collapse or any of the real issues of the day, who instead just want to demonise the other side and argue. He is one of the gatekeepers of that. He is... yeah, terrible rowdy person, and is typical of those of the right and the left, as I say, who, by virtue of the platforms on which they operate, which has an algorithm which tends to incentivise recherche, shock value and outrage, as opposed to, I don't know, some sort of well-meaning, truthful, long-term, long-form discussion on things, because it does the former rather than the latter. It means that outrage and recherche shock value just proliferates, and nothing ends up getting done. So I'm a little put out, I'll be honest. As per usual, I'm quite good at being moody, and so I thought, as I stumbled across, as I was also on YouTube, I thought I would give myself a bit of a pick me up maybe, and produce a video for you lovely people in your droves. So I was looking at, the channel evades me now. It might have been, is it the book? What is it? Okay, the Book Chemist. Am I pronouncing that correctly? I think so. It might be the Book Chemist. Who's I think 1 or 2 year old review of War and Peace just came onto my feed, and I really enjoyed the video, and it really set me thinking. Also with my recent reading of Tennyson's In Memoriam. The whole idea of brevity being somehow significant is very much on my mind. So I thought, given that it's a Sunday, and that we spend most of Sunday sort of writhing in and around amongst the sheets, that's what Sunday is for most of us. We are at one with our anatomy, might we say, on a Sunday a little bit more. We spend most of it, flat and supine as opposed to out and about. I thought we should talk of the, what would you say, length and lack thereof in literature and in poetry, and just want to have a discussion about book length, which I think will be immensely productive, I hope, and will stimulate some debate. How about that? That would be nice, wouldn't it? So I have with me, as per usual, my trusty pink hot water bottle. I don't have a twin set of beagles that can come up and cuddle me and thus regale both myself and you. I don't have pets, unfortunately, so you're going to have to do with this. I'm sure you'll agree, extraordinarily well-trained little pink hot water bottle here, which is providing me with much warmth on these freezing days in Britain. Okay, so without further ado, I've written down a few little prompts about big books and small books, but first of all I wanted to conduct a small thought experiment. That might be a little bit of an auspicious term for it, but I have with me 2 books here, and hopefully I can just about... Ooh, can I do that? Right, okay. I'm trying not to give away their titles, but okay. Let me just say, for instance, that one book in my hand is a very thematically complex, quite groundbreaking work that deals with, as I say, many themes, is very readable, very enjoyable, much time can be spent in reading one of these books, and the other one you will find to be vacuous and tawdry and a complete waste of time, and something that not many people would recommend regardless of its length. So have you got, one of those is the former and one of them is the latter, and I would be willing to bet that you would like me to say that this one on my right and possibly your left is the one that pertained to the former attributes, meaning that it was much more worth reading, and perhaps this one in my left hand on your right is the one that's perhaps a little bit vacuous and tawdry and not worth it. When in fact, when I reveal the cover titles, the big one was Ulysses by James Joyce, which is a complete waste of time and should never be opened ever again by anybody unless you, I don't know, unless you have so much time on your hands where you've got literally nothing to do. And the other one is Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I'm sure, though it is one sitting's read, you will agree is a fount from which much other literature has flowed. And so it was just a little thought experiment. What I'm setting out to discuss here is just how much bigness or heft or largeness contributes to our assessments, perhaps, of books. So I have a few prompts here. And I want also just to preface, there's only a few of these prompts by, if I may, categorising or at least splitting some readers down the line and saying that there is very clearly two types of readers. Hopefully, if we were to make it a Venn diagram, lots of us would sit nicely in the middle. But there are... Sorry, this is an immensely grown-up pen, isn't it? Look at that. There are one set of readers that read for the pleasure of reading, who find it in and of itself a recommendable and joyful activity. And there are another set of readers who read purely for the pleasure of having read and the feeling of having read and of acquired some knowledge. In another sense, reading is just something that is an avenue through which sort of information can be intravenously injected and put into you. You could sort of log on to the world of knowledge, and that's what books are to some people. I would think gladly that lots of us, especially you guys that watch me, fit in the middle somewhere, where we find reading quite pleasurable, but if it teaches us something, it's great, but we don't go solely for ones that... we don't go solely for tuition or for instruction or prescription or anything like that. So I just want to preface it like that because the length of a book can contribute to our attitudes to that type of thing. So we have our first prompt here, which is that huge books, especially when I was reading, when I was a sort of when I was a pen-flicking wastrel of whatever, 17 or 18, and was just starting out on my readerly journey, big books are the bugbear of new readers, because they haven't yet, unless they're reading something remarkable, they haven't yet learnt to like it, if you know what I mean. And so you wouldn't, for some reason, instinct would guide you. So if you had a little cousin or a little brother or whatever that was just getting into reading, you would not hand him War and Peace, or you would not hand him Clarissa or Infinite Jest or a huge biography of Mao or something like that. You would hand him something small and or indeed if it's just a newly acquired friend that you wanted to talk to with books about it, or somebody who's curious about reading, you would very rarely hand them something massive. And big books, I think, tend to be a huge barrier to people enjoying reading, or to people starting to get to read, because of course, if you enjoy the book that you're reading, I mean, good Lord, what have I read recently? Barchester Towers, that's 500 pages. Provided I was enjoying it, I would have happily had that gone on for 1,500 pages and be as long as Clarissa or something like that, because it was so ultimately enjoyable. which leads on to a few of my older points, but you're always free to comment on this. Would you hand over a really, really large book to a new reader solely because you thought they were going to enjoy it, or would you hand them a smaller book? I would almost certainly hand them a much, much smaller book that they would automatically find interesting. I think that would be my default position, but I'm not too sure. Another point, of course, that all of this is speed dependent as well. So if you are a particularly quick reader and can get through 100 pages an hour, then of course this, James Joyce's Ulysses, is going to take you half the time that somebody is going to take reading the same book. And so we're really talking about time and investment of time if we're going to use a horrid sort of business parlance. Then that's the kind of word. The business nomenclature is all about investment and money. But if we are going to invest time into large books, then we want them to be rewarding. And so we're really talking about, I almost wanted to sort of create a unit of measurement here. So if we were to dial everything down to something like, I don't know, smirks per hour or smirks per minute, how many smirks per hour or minute did you get from that book? That would be a great way of equalising both this and this. So, for example, smirks per minute, you would probably get 9 or 10 smirks per hour or smirks per minute with this. Whereas with James Joyce's Ulysses, smirks per minute you might, or headbacks per minute, or whatever it is, smiles per minute, you might get 1 at best. I would doubt even that. It's probably 0.04 smiles per minute. That would be my unit of measure for this. So I thought that was a very interesting thing to consider, because, as I say, we're always we must talk about time as opposed to length, because people read at different speeds, and I'm sure we all know the scientific equations which link speed, time and length. So I thought that was a very interesting thing to consider, because the people that we mentioned before, I don't want to other them, but people who seem to solely read for to get information and to sort of draw facts and knowledge and references and gobbets like a leech from something, those people are not happy to read Ulysses. They would much rather, nobody should be happy to read Ulysses, but people should be. They would much rather have something condensed into a series of bullet points rather than wade through the whole thing in a pair of readerly dungarees. So again, I think it's just something easy to consider. Do you operate like that? Do you find that, because I read as I say, I read In Memoriam and was getting every stanza, which is in the nature of poetry often, even though it's quite a long poem, every stanza I was getting something, whether it was a bit of information about Tennyson's life and his relationship with Hallam, or whether it was just the play, wow, that sounds excellent, that's beautiful, here is somebody who 200 years previous has thought something that I am now thinking or experiencing now. So and that was happening, as I say, 3, 4, 5 times a minute reading that poem. But you can read but would the type of reader that the acquisitus reader that just wants information rather than wants to spend 45 minutes in the company of somebody they enjoy the company of, is that any different, or what type of reader perhaps are you? I'm just very curious about big books and small books. I've got another prompt here. Is there not a preponderance of big books on the whenever a list of the greats is ever put together and put on the Guardian website, or the Times have done these types of things, 100 best novels of the 20th century or all time in Western literature? There is a preponderance of big books on there. So, just the two that come to mind at the moment is Middlemarch and War and Peace, one of which I have read, one of which I haven't. And I suppose large books give you a lot more space and a lot more time, and they in and of themselves ask for a lot more patience, because, you know, one speedy reader's huge book is a post-it note, and the other slow reader's pamphlet is a huge undertaking. But I suppose large books give you a little bit more availability. They give you time, and they give you breathing room, and there are more characters, especially in Tolstoy's case, there are a lot more characters that you can cram in there. So again, I do wonder, are you in, because that's the huge thing as well, isn't it? Whenever I see on lots of other booktubers channels, and I'm sorry I'm being a little bit sort of incongruous here, and I seem like a mad scientist who's deprived of coffee, but there's a huge amount of YouTubers that produce maybe a TBR every month, one of which is a huge, massive, door stopper, and they will say, "Oh God, I'm immensely intimidated." Middlemarch again is often one that's seduced, or Gibbon's Rise and Fall. What's it called? Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. Is that what it is? Yeah. Or I forget who does it now. The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. Those books are often cited as things people know that they ought to have read but are intimidated by, and yet if we allow that they are enjoyable, then of course time is of no essence. Like when you were young and you were playing in the sand with your friends, it was essentially an atemporal activity, because it might have lasted an hour or 2 hours, but you were just completely lost about it. So length does not define how much we ought to enjoy something, which is, I think, the point that I'm trying to get at. Because now we have companies whose avowed service to a sort of would-be customer base, and that lots of more prominent booktubers have as their video sponsors all the time, is apps that will condense big books so that they will have read 17 or 18 of the largest books ever run through a printing press, but in fact all they've done is read the sort of 8 brief bullet points on the subject. And I don't know how much snobbery is putting into this. I was formerly a book snob. Hopefully I'm being weaned off of that admittedly quite addictive drug of pomposity and snobbery. But yeah, as I say, there are entire companies now that based upon people's fear of length, produce, I don't know, little tidbits, little snippets, little sheets of bullet points that give readers what happens in the book. Instead of having to, heaven forbid, spend a week reading a book, you can just have it in 15 minutes pumped into your brain, which strikes me as lazy. I don't want to make too much of a value judgment, but that strikes me as lazy and contrary to what we might say of as one of the key reasons to reading, or one of the key reasons why we read. So I'm just interested, because have I had much the same experience by reading In Memoriam in 2 sittings in a couple of hours as I have when it took me 8 or 9 days to read The Brothers Karamazov? Is it? I mean, we live in a time where short form content is both destroying our dopaminergic cycles, meaning that we've got diminished attention spans, and we need things that grip us greatly all the time, rather than just stuff that seems quite alluring every so often. We've completely changed how we consume books and media and all sorts. So it's just a sort of a ponderance of mine, because as I say, I've just read a really what is a comparatively short work, Tennyson's In Memoriam, as we've discussed, and I don't know, I feel as if I haven't, it's weird, I feel as if I haven't earned the right to have enjoyed it, or have got literary enjoyment out of it, because it only took me a couple of hours to read. Maybe that's just part and parcel of reading somebody of Tennyson's brilliance, I'm not sure, but yeah. And it's the same with these guys as well. This won't take you long at all, and it's marvellous, and this will take you, I mean, really, it will take you all week, and it's claptrap. So that's that. Again, this is a little bit of a Sunday musing for you all. Feel free to comment. Do you like big books? Do you enjoy the challenge of big books? Are you a bit of a sadomasochist that wants to read big books purely for their bigness? But hopefully this wasn't too phallic or penile a connotation for a Sunday. I hope I castrated it for you and made sure that there weren't many sexual connotations. But yeah, that was a little conversation on length and lack thereof. Please, please, please let me know, how do your opinions on big books and small books and how much you like them, how much does that impinge upon your TBRs and what you read and your thought processes when choosing your next book or your next series or whatever. So yeah, not altogether congruous, as I say, not altogether well said, I imagine, but I do hope that it stimulates some debate for us. So it's goodbye from me, and it's goodbye from this, as I say, this very, very well-trained little pink hot water bottle. But yes, thank you ever so much for watching BookTube, and goodbye.